Hello and welcome to Rise and Fall. My name's Sophie. This is where we look at figures in history who rose to the highest of heights and the stories behind their downfall. Some monarchs have lots of time on the throne to do as they want, tell people what to do, and to generally have a great time. Others have their time cut short, whether it be through illness, execution, or just straight up deciding they'd had enough. Some of England's most famous monarchs have their reign measured in decades. But what happens if your reign was measured in days? 9 days to be exact. This is Lady Jane Grey. In order to find out how Lady Jane Grey came to the throne, we not only have to look back to her predecessor, Edward VI, but to his father, Henry VIII. Now Henry VIII you might know from having 6 wives, divorcing 2, and killing 2 others, but he also changed the fabric of England. In 1536, Henry broke with Rome, splitting England from the Vatican and making himself head of the Church. Although Henry was a devoted Catholic, in his break with Rome he had set in motion the foundation for his son, Edward, to be a revolutionary Protestant king. Okay, this is important to understand the rest of this. For all intents and purposes, Catholicism and Protestantism wasn't that different, but being the wrong one could have meant death. There was a few differences, like Catholics believing the bread and wine actually turned into the body and blood of Jesus, while Protestants thought it was more symbolic, as well as Catholics stressing the importance of pilgrimages, whereas Protestants thought they were distractions. What you need to remember is that Protestantism was new and scary. Catholicism was traditional. In 1547, Edward VI came to the throne at only 9 years old. His father, Henry VIII, was a devout Catholic. However, Edward's reign started pushing the country into a different, more Protestant direction. Edward was so young that his reign was influenced greatly by powerful men around him, such as the Duke of Northumberland. They were firmly Protestant, and also ensured Edward was taught by Protestant tutors throughout his schooling. 6 years into Edward's reign, the Church of England had become pretty much entirely Protestant, and Edward had grown into a devout Protestant. However, before anticipated, he had to start making arrangements for his succession. He had become gravely ill at only 15 years old. This sent Edward's advisors into a spiral. Their ideal Protestant England was at crossroads. Queen Mary was next in line for the throne. Mary was a Catholic. All the work done under Edward's reign was in jeopardy of being erased. In a rush, Edward and Lord Northumberland altered the line of succession for a Protestant to take over, in the case of Edward's death. The unsuspecting Lady Jane Grey would take over, the daughter of Henry VIII's sister, Mary, and funnily enough, Lord Northumberland's daughter-in-law. But Lady Jane Grey did not want to be queen. She fainted at the idea when it was first broached upon her. She was only 16 years old and was thrust from relative obscurity into the most important position in the country. But she didn't have a choice. By all accounts, Jane was a reluctant queen at best, and may have even been forced into royalty against her will by the same advisers who surrounded and influenced Edward during his reign. Summoned by the nobility, she and her husband made the journey to Sion House to be crowned queen. Seeing all those at court waiting before her, she began to shake. Wearing a dress of green velvet embroidered with gold, with a long trail behind her that was carried by her mother, she made her way towards the throne. As she walked, a canopy was carried over her head. As soon as the coronation started, it ground to a halt. On the throne, Jane refused to wear the crown. Through reassurances from her father and advisers, she reluctantly accepted. Jane was now Queen of England. Jane went through the motions in her first moments as queen, but as time went on, it became more and more obvious that her superiors had made a huge mistake. Mary, Edward's half-sister, a Catholic, and a more direct descendant than Jane, saw an opportunity and began drawing plans. Within days of Jane's coronation, Mary wrote to the council demanding to be made queen. When your claim to the throne is questioned, it's important to have powerful friends. Jane didn't. Few in England even knew who she was, and her claim on the throne was becoming increasingly tenuous. Jane had to respond, and fast. Within days, Jane's council sent a reply affirming their support for Jane, and started forming an army to capture Mary. However, Mary had begun creating an army of her own, and Jane's supporters soon discovered the massive support that Mary had. She was far more popular amongst Catholics, and many also believed she had a far stronger claim to the throne, throwing their weight behind her. After this support became clear, Lady Jane Grey's vanished. Mary was proclaimed queen, successfully overthrowing Jane, who was immediately tried and taken prisoner as a traitor to the crown. However, taking pity on the young girl, Mary allowed her to remain as a high-status inmate in the Tower of London, waited on by servants and being allowed to walk freely in the Queen's gardens. Mary was initially reluctant to put her own cousin to death. However, she knew that Jane could become a figurehead for Protestant rebellions in the future. She offered to spare their lives if Jane and her husband agreed to convert to Catholicism, but they were both now devoted Protestants and refused. They were both sentenced to death. Jane's death was idealised in this 1864 painting by Paul Delaroche of the final moments of Lady Jane's life, a painting which exemplifies the tragedy of Jane, a naive 16-year-old forced against her will into the most powerful position in the country, and in just 9 short days shown blindfolded and crying, helped on to the chopping block. Hi guys, thanks very much for watching. Click here for more videos once they come, and like and subscribe down below. Thanks!